Hey guys, welcome to Y&R Daily Update YouTube channel. Today's topics: Young and the Restless spoilers reveal that the secrets Claire uncovers at Holden's house, where every glance is a spark and every secret is a landmine waiting to explode. The relationship between Claire Newman and Holden suddenly rushes forward like a train without brakes. From seemingly harmless conversations to private moments of temptation, they are drawn into a spiral of intimacy and danger. The story begins with an ironic joke. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. The idea of matching prison stripes. But as time goes on, the playful phrase becomes a chilling metaphor for the prospect that both of them might face if the truth comes to the surface. Because Holden is not only a man who knows how to listen at the right time and show up at the right place, but also the key to the forbidden room filled with evidence, where sins are arranged neatly like files in a safe with names as heavy as lead, Damien and Chance. Meanwhile, Kyle Abbott, his ex-lover still hot under the collar, wrestles with himself between concern and possession. He reads what Claire doesn't want to believe. Holden isn't just untrustworthy. He's on a mission. Kyle's shrewdness, coupled with his survival instincts honed in battles in the corporate world, helps him see through the frosted glass of good manners. Kyle warns. Kyle demands. Kyle threatens. Stay away from Claire. But the words slide off Holden's stoic surface. Instead of backing down, Holden moves closer, perhaps on command, perhaps on heart, and most likely both. For Holden works for Cain, who has set a long game, and the most valuable pawn to close in on Newman's forces is none other than Claire. Cain knows all too well to defeat a stronghold. You don't need to bring a ladder to the wall. You just need to install a man to push the button to open the gate from the inside. Holden, with his clean-cut appearance and clean past, becomes the perfect hook. His mission is simple, and daring become important enough to Claire that she will open up and then open the door. An access card, an access code, a computer left asleep in a moment of distraction, just enough to tip the balance of power. What Cain doesn't anticipate, however, is that a pawn in love will quickly turn wild, ready to break the rules. Ready to break the rules if his heart tells him to. As Holden spends more time with Claire, the frozen orders in his head begin to thaw, revealing a warm pool. He begins to see Claire as more than just an entrance, but someone who can make him want to stay. On a night when Genoa City breathes with the heartbeat of bars, music, and cars, Claire and Holden go off the rails. That crazy night begins as a release from a stressful day, a gathering, a few drinks, unspoken confessions, and then a car taking an unexpected turn. But the chaos doesn't come from the alcohol. It comes from the momentary admission that they've crossed a line. Claire ignoring Kyle's warnings. Holden ignoring the barriers he's erected to complete his mission. The next morning, instead of peace, they realize they've made a silent vow to go forward together or to fall together. And while Claire brushes her hair in the mirror, Holden's house, which is always preternaturally neat, vibrates with locked secrets. Claire isn't stupid. She's made mistakes, and that's how she's learned to read the silence. There's a closet that's rarely opened, a room that's always avoided for reasons, a drawer whose key has been lost for weeks. All of it is like a visual puzzle. And at some point, all it takes is a small mistake, a door that's not quite closed, a warning beep, a USB stick left on the desk for the pieces to start falling together. Blurry photos, a few late-night delivery receipts, and anonymous accounts transaction log. And most terrifying of all, the preliminary reports of two incidents, Damien and Chance. Names, timelines, itineraries, technical glitches, and a string of phone calls that last exactly as long as the incidents themselves all point to one stark truth. Someone orchestrated it. And if the chain of events doesn't lie, Holden is the man behind the scenes, or at least the executioner for the absent director. Inside Holden, Cain's orders and his own voice are at war. His job requires him to lay the paving stones to Newman. But his feelings make him look to Claire as a place to return to. The problem is those paths are not parallel. They intersect at the intersection of truth. Because once Claire gets her hands on the evidence, she can't pretend it was all a mistake. And if she chooses to expose the secret, Holden will be forced to admit what he did, even if some of it was out of pressure or gratitude or a past debt to Cain. And if Claire chooses to remain silent, she will be complicit, making herself the most fragile link in the machine of sin, and that will destroy her from within. Cain in the background waits patiently, like a skilled chess player accustomed to waiting for his opponent to fall into his trap. He knows Kyle is stirring the pot, but he also knows Kyle can't break what's been laid out by love and guilt. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Cain needs Claire with her connections with the trust Newman is placing in the rebranded Claire Newman as a light lever to move the giant machine. And Holden, a mix of discipline and emotional whirlwind, is the perfect tool until he begins to wonder if he's even a tool anymore. The twist in the story lies in Claire's inner decision. She can believe that all the evidence is a cover, that Holden is trapped, that someone is using his home as a temporary storage facility to frame him. Her kindness and old wounds urge her to seek a rescue. But her reason, sharpened by Kyle's facts and experience, pulls her back to the ground. When all the clues point to a single point, coincidence is no longer coincidence. Claire knew that if she continued, she would enter a tunnel where there would be only two things at the end: the light of justice or the click of handcuffs. The once doped prison-striped uniform, now hovering like an omen. In the days that followed, the rhythm of Genoa City seemed to change with each step they took. Kyle quietly gathered information, talking to people he believed could add to the puzzle. The driver, the night guard, the warehouse worker, witnesses often overlooked, but holding the thread of truth. Claire observed and tested. She set little traps in Holden's house, a fake document placed in plain sight, a mini camera in the corner of a closet, a tracking app running in the background on a tablet. Holden, for the first time, clearly feels both eyes on him like two laser beams, and he is forced to choose. Continue to be Cain's hand or become the man brave enough to do what is right, even if it means burning bridges with the past. The night of the confrontation comes sooner than expected. Claire, holding a USB drive containing a copy of what she found, confronts Holden in the room down the hall, the room he's always said he'll clean up later. There's no shouting, just timelines, cash flows, and shipping routes read out as neatly and coldly as an indictment. Holden is silent. Kyle appears a few minutes later, like a handbrake, not to take over, but to make sure Claire isn't alone in that fateful moment. In the yellow light, Holden makes a two-part admission. The first part is the truth about his part in arranging some of the steps, but not the one who gave the orders. The second part is his account of Cain, the mastermind behind the game. He insists that Damien and Chance aren't victims in the simple sense. It's more complicated with debts, compromises, and broken promises. But no matter the big picture, what he did was still putting others at risk. In that moment, love, if there was one, was weight against conscience. Claire realized that the only thing she could do to save herself was to not let her heart deny the truth. She didn't turn away hastily, nor did she embrace Holden in forgiveness. She chose the harder path, forcing Holden to walk with her out of that room, not to escape, but to confront. Kyle, surprisingly, didn't push the situation to its extreme. He became the pace setter, keeping things under control. This was no longer a battle for affection, but an attempt to save a person from falling into darkness and to save Claire herself from becoming the next name in someone's half-finished dossier. Outside, the city hummed as if nothing had ever happened. But to the three people in the house, every sound is promontory. The distant sound of a fire truck, the whistling of a siren, the clicking of a door latch. They know the striped prison uniform joke is no longer funny. No matter what they choose to confess tomorrow, who they call, or where they place their trust, the cut has appeared. Holden can redeem himself by exposing Cain's entire plan, willing to pay the price to pull Claire out of the vortex. Kyle can put aside his pride and stand by Claire as a storm wall. No longer because he wants to be loved back, but because he understands some wars don't require winners, only survivors. And Clare, caught between two forces, needs to reaffirm the identity she's worked so hard to rebuild. No longer the girl who is easily led by the desire to be loved, but a woman who is sober enough to distinguish between those who love her and those who are using love as a tool. Maybe she'll turn that USB stick into the authorities. Maybe she'll use it as a trump card to force Holden to cooperate in exposing Cain. Or maybe she'll choose to make the system look a little different. Because when someone like her steps in, the glass houses of Genoa City rarely take the first pebble. The story ends in a breathtaking frame. 3 people, 3 beliefs, 3 paths intertwined with secrets that no longer lie in the dark. Clare and Holden's feelings have reached a new height, but not the height that people dream of. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. It is the edge of a cliff where 1 step away is falling, 1 step back is giving up, and 1 step right is accepting confrontation. Kyle, though considered jealous, is the one who saw it first. And Cain, the one behind the curtain, is about to recalculate his moves when his pawn knows how to choose his own path. From this moment on, every decision has a price. And if one day someone has to wear the prison stripes, it is not because fate is teasing them, but because each small choice has laid out the path that leads them there. Genoa City has a way of testing seemingly redeemed souls. And Clare Newman's story follows that same grim trajectory. When Holden arrives as a breath of fresh air, calm, good listener with a heart-melting way of saying things, Clare thinks she can finally live a normal life free of the past and the scars of her reputation. But normally has never been the Newman destiny. Behind Holden's gentle smile and kind gestures lies a maze of tangled threads beginning in Los Angeles with Audrey Charles, where shady dealings are painted with a veneer of legitimacy in the language of deals, investment channels, and no-strings-attached partnerships. In that maze, Holden is more than just a passerby. He's the one who's learned to walk without leaving footprints to touch taboos while keeping his hands clean on the paperwork. Because she understood this, Victoria, who once believed that love could be therapeutic, reacted like a strategist. Her daughter was approaching a storm, and if not quelled early, the blowback could sweep Clare back into the legal maelstrom she had struggled to escape. The Los Angeles past was more than lavish parties, newspaper photos, and contracts naming partner companies whose headquarters no one knew. It was also the nights of alternating wire transfers through layers of intermediary wallets, the suburban warehouses that opened at 3 o'clock in the morning and closed before dawn. The shell companies that changed hands as quickly as magic. Audra Charles, who always wore the invisible crown of soft power, needed a discreet enforcer behind the scenes. Holden was the logical choice. They didn't need to call it illegal. Sometimes simply relocating a shipment, rebilling a document, extending the reporting deadline, or tweaking the identity of the beneficiary is enough to turn the numbers into knives. As the threads stretch into Genoa City, Holden seems to want to believe that he's simply opening a new door to the future. But every door has a price, and the first to pay is usually the one closest to the hinge. This time it might be Clare. Holden's partnership with Cain gives form to all his doubts. Cain doesn't care about ideology or redemption. He operates on leverage and collateral. Profit is the only language Cain trusts. And Holden, in Cain's eyes, is an obedient interface between the legal world and the gray area. The arrival of Clare, a redefined Newman, both young in power and symbolic in character, makes the game more interesting. A nod to a charity project, an operationally granted access code, or a harmless visit to a temporary archive could be the key to unlocking the entire system. So, Holden is expected to get close to Clare's heart while keeping the reins from her suspicions. Ironically, the closer he gets to her, the harder it is to keep both secrecy and distance. Victoria watches not from the sofa, but from a literal campaign room where Clare's schedules, touchpoints, partnerships, and media statuses are updated in real time. She understands that her daughter has stumbled because she both lacks trust in the right people and craves trust as a normal person. She hires experts to check the legal background of the companies around Holden, quietly scans the connections to Los Angeles, and creates a risk map of the links that could drag Clare into legal trouble with just a signature or a cleverly edited photo. She didn't want to stifle her daughter's freedom, but she refused to stand by and watch Newman's daughter-in-law be trapped again. For Victoria, love was not just about allowing, but also about putting up barriers at the right time. Kyle, on the other hand, brings a visceral weariness. He doesn't have Victoria's team of experts, but he has the intuition of someone who is paid dearly for misjudging people. Case sees Holden as more than a man who pleases, but as a man who moves deftly between the shadows. He follows the small signs, late-night calls, vague appointments, old acquaintances in Los Angeles who suddenly lock their accounts, hints of a big deal coming. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. He doesn't like Cain, and he doesn't like Holden's hands-off and keeps it clean style even more. Jealousy, if anything, is just a catalyst that tightens Kyle's resolve. What he really fears is that one morning Clare's name will appear on a temporary restraining order, and the doors of the Newmans' house will slam shut. Clare's mind at this point is a separate front. She wants to believe in a new beginning where people see her as Clare is now, not as her past convictions or the pages of the tabloids, while also battling her inner demons, guilt, the fear that others will never truly believe her, and the dangerous allure of being understood to the core. Holden appears as the answer. He listens without judgment and eases the invisible tremors she feels when she stands in front of crowded rooms. But at the same time, he is an invitation to step into the edge of risk. A business leisure trip to the West Coast, a temporary favor to meet a deadline, an intimate photo to avoid scrutiny at an event. Each one alone is harmless. Together, they form a road with vague signs. The conversation shifts when Holden makes a more explicit offer. Join him in launching a seemingly charitable venture, which is actually a new line of business between Genoa City and Los Angeles. The offer is sugar-coated with pretty words, creating opportunities for youth, promoting community arts, supporting the digital transformation of nonprofits. Clare finds herself in a vulnerable place, wanting to use her current position to make up for the damage she's done. She's ready to pitch in, ready to sign, ready to take responsibility. That's when people like Victoria and Kyle know they have to pull the brakes. Victoria doesn't choose to confront the issue head-on. She knows that the more she bans, the more defensive Clare becomes. Instead, she creates a cushion. She suggests that Newman's legal team come along for due process, installs a tech security team to monitor access and logs, and assigns a communications consultant to monitor any photos and captions that might become damaging evidence. She also quietly contacted a few trusted contacts in Los Angeles to set up an information waiting room. If there were any unusual cash flows or illegal late-night events, she would know within hours. Kyle, for his part, took the soft route. He met with people who had worked around Cain, asked by not asking, suggested by not suggesting, and pieced together a picture that emerged piece by piece. Meanwhile, Cain sped up. Backup arrangements were put into active status, and some of Audra Young's old LA faces showed up backstage at Genoa City, a temporary warehouse rented under the guise of holding exhibition materials. Holden, caught between duty and real feelings, took the riskiest route, let things happen on their own, and hoped that the emotions would fix the plan's sharp edges. He holds Clare back from getting too deep into the technical details, but lies about why. Small lies repeated long enough form an opaque wall that blocks out the light. Grand opening night arrives with cameras, congratulations, and a guest list that makes it all look legit. Clare shows up confidently. Victoria smiles just enough. Kyle keeps his distance, but doesn't take his eyes off Holden. The first few hours pass smoothly until the signs start to show. A truck arrives earlier than expected. A shipment of crates with mismatched seal numbers. Of schedule adjustment email from an unknown address impersonating a partner organization. To the average person, These are minor operational glitches. To those who have seen the undercurrent, they're a red flag. Victoria activates Plan B. The legal team requests a check of the paperwork. The IT security team blocks the back hole. The communications consultant accidentally leads Clare away from the warehouse area. Kay follows Holden out to the parking lot where his second phone suddenly goes cold. Minutes later, the game changes. A source in Los Angeles planted by Victoria confirmed that a support consignment channel that was actually a front for dirty money was about to be activated on both ends simultaneously, which meant that if all went Cain's way, tomorrow morning the tabloids would have two pictures. One of Clare Newman smiling next to a project sign, and the other of a warehouse supposedly linked to her being raided in LA. The public would build the covert link. The legalities would come later. St. Clair, the ironic nickname for those who wanted to see her as a reincarnation, would be pulled from the pedestal in this way. Her already fragile reputation would once again be a tinderbox. But Victoria and Kyle weren't behind the script. They were pulling it off with a three-pronged attack: legal, technological, and public. Legally, Newman files a formal request for an independent audit of the entire process, assigning Clare to the role of guest of honor rather than the organizer, and pushes for a signed third-party crime scene report, a small gesture that breaks the bridge of accountability that Cain intended to build. Technologically, the security team intercepts the data, recording both logins from the foreign devices associated with the warehouse, assigning them to locations that were not within CLA's travel radius. Publicly, the media advisor cleverly leaks behind the scenes of Clare's efforts to demand transparency, pushing the narrative that she is an advocate for integrity rather than an enabler. Externally, Holden is faced with a choice that cannot be delayed. Kyle doesn't threaten with his fists. He presents the data, times, seal numbers, cash in and out routes, Audra's contacts from several burners. Kyle doesn't need a confession. He needs Holden's immediate cooperation to stop the gears from turning. In that moment, Holden understood that his keeping her safe by lying had reached its limit. If he continued, Clare would not only lose her reputation, she would lose herself. The climax came when Victoria entered the warehouse area herself, accompanied by the independent auditors and the representatives of the authorities that she had proactively invited to randomly check. The unexpected blow exposed Cain's team. An employee in charge of documents used a different printout than the original files stored in the system. A warehouse camera suddenly lost signal exactly 20 minutes before the truck arrived. A time transfer order came from an intermediary account linked to a shell company in LA. Every link suddenly lit up. Clare, at this point, was no longer the central figure to hang the blame. She became the best witness for the effort to be transparent. St. Clair arrested the script that those who wanted to shape the story had prepared suddenly became St. Clair leads the demand for inspection, and the arrow of public opinion changed direction. Holden pays the price. He agrees to sign a statement of intent naming two anonymous contacts in LA, people who had traveled with Audra, and admitting his role as a go-between in coordinating the shipment's route to avoid internal scrutiny. It's not a final confession, but it's enough to break the circle of protection Cain has built. The personal price is the loss of Clare's trust, something he can't get back with a few "I just wanted to protect you" lines. But the value of the moment lies in the fact that Clare, faced with the abyss, doesn't fall. She chooses truth over vague loyalty, principle over fleeting emotion. The demon inside doesn't disappear. It's just put to rest when she forces herself to walk through it. As the night closes, the city's lights are still on, but the game has turned. Cain must take a step back to patch up the West Coast network as two links are pulled into the light. Audra, though not in the public eye, must have understood that the old LA connections are no longer as tight as they once were. Kyle, who is seen as jealous and old-fashioned, is the first wall that keeps the wave from crushing Clare. Victoria doesn't win by punishing anyone. She wins by keeping her daughter upright in the middle of the tornado and turning a dirty trap into a public lesson in how a Newman deals with risk legally, transparently, and proactively controlling the narrative. The road ahead won't be easy. Holden, if he's truly repentant, will have to go all the way to cooperation, provide evidence, face the consequences, and accept that love is no excuse for clearing moral debt. Clare will continue to answer the hard questions. Why didn't she find out sooner? Why did she trust someone who was involved in the gray area? But in those questions, there's a new truth. She's no longer the version of herself who is easily pulled into the darkness by her need for love. She has learned to use her vigilance as a means of protecting herself and those around her. And if one day her reputation is called into question, she has the facts and the allies to avoid being labeled a potential family killer by those who like to make up stories. Genoa City will have many storms ahead, but tonight at least, Clare has stood firm in the eye of the storm, and that is the most solid foundation for her to continue on her own 2 feet, not in the shadow of any man or scheme. Subscribe to our channel to stay updated with the latest news. Subscribe our channel for more latest update.